What is up, everybody watching on the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and welcome back to yet another episode of the Horsemen podcast. I believe this is episode 4, and this is gonna be a very good one. And I apologize for Ricky being the star of the show on my screen, having the big screen. It's just how Discord wants to treat me, apparently. But nonetheless, we got a very interesting episode. Our picks of our 5 overrated and 5 underrated bands. But of course, most of the regulars are back, minus Raphael Fireblade. But we got a special guest, our first special guest of this podcast, and I want to introduce him first. My good buddy, one of my best friends in all of YouTube. Please welcome, well, I mean, for those that watch my channel regularly should know who that icon is. It's KamikazeGames. What's up?
Hello and good evening, everyone. Time for me to invade yet another podcast and turn it into my own.
Yeah. But of course, 3 of the 4 regulars, except for me, are back. We got Hannah Klein.
Hi.
We got Horror Master, a.k.a. Ricky.
No.
And Artur Felipe Castanha from Portugal.
What's up?
Yeah, so we're all here, and this may turn into a bloodbath. No pun intended for the band. But
Watch the first 3 rows may get crimson, and I'm not apologizing for it. Pun intended.
So yeah, I bet you if we get any comments for the episode, people are gonna shit all over us. But before we begin with honorable mentions, let us preface something. So people wonder, who may be watching this in the archive after it's posted, what do we mean by underrated and overrated? Well, underrated I'm going to determine as bands that have had a certain awareness in the underground of music, but have never gotten as much popularity or as much love as, say, other bands in that same scene or in the same genre. Overrated, now this is where people may get their feelings hurt, but I'm just going to preface. Overrated doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. You can still be amazing and be overrated. So, if a favorite band of yours gets put on overrated and your feelings get hurt, you're putting too much emphasis on the word and you just gotta get over yourself.
Respect opinion.
Exactly. Exactly. And not to mention, perhaps the bands we have on our overrated list are bands we love, but just feel that maybe they're not as great as most people say they are. But, without further ado, we got to get through honorable mentions for each category, and since we got special guest Kamikaze, Dylan, how about you start off with any honorable mentions you may have for underrated and overrated?
Well, I've been extremely busy for the past week, so I've really only got one overrated and one underrated pick, for like the actual list. But if I had to just off the top of my head throw out some honorable mentions, I would say there is an argument that can be made that Avenged Sevenfold is slightly overrated. I really enjoy their music.
Lightly? Sheesh!
I know, right?
Lightly? Come on! That's just...
Okay, that started.
Just a little bit.
Let the Flame Wars begin!
Good start, no, I know, right?
Yeah.
This might be one of our most controversial episodes yet.
Oh, no doubt about it.
Yeah, but we respect each other's opinions. We're not like so many other podcasts that start world wars afterwards.
Oh, that's so sad. I want to start one.
Oh, God.
Hey, Germany already started 2 wars, so not the...
Oh!
But we had to end them. Remember?
Sorry, Anna. But it was a joke.
Holy fuck. Alright,
Off to a great start.
yeah, well, indeed. Alright, Ricky, since your face is plastered all over the screen, how about you give your honorable mentions for each?
Alright, for overrated, one of them is Motley Crue. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Motley Crue. I think they're one of the pioneers of glam metal. But, come on, man. There's so many other great bands that deserve, like Wasp.
Yes.
Probably like Wasp. That's a if I had to choose between Wasp and Motley Crue, I would have gone with Wasp. Now another band is another glam metal band. Now Arthur, you have a bone to pick with them. Bon Jovi.
My aunt will want to kill you right now. I'm gonna be
I mean, like I said, I love Bon Jovi, but I mean, come on, I mean, they are the reason there's so many quote unquote glam metal clones. I mean,
The
oh,
bone
Jesus
that I
Christ.
have to pick with Bon. Sorry.
and to be nominated in the Hall of Fame before like a Motorhead or Iron Maiden, it's just why? I mean, come on.
It's the Hall of Fame. They've always made shit choices.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
get me started on that. That could be a different episode.
Already
altogether.
made my rant about it, so
Yeah.
don't need another one.
All right, if we're underrated, I have two honorable mentions. One of them is the band Brujeria.
Brujeria.
Of course,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
of course.
Viejo pendejo. Oh,
Yeah,
I can't speak Spanish.
Ricky can.
yeah.
Ricky can.
I mean, they're
And
from
I
Mex-
can too.
I mean, they're from Mexico. They're since I live near a border town.
They are funny.
They're kind of big over here, and the thing about them is that they talk about the cartel, about things that happen in Mexico, which I kind of see every other time I go over there. They're really, really underrated. They should be appreciated more in the grindcore scene next
And
to
they-
something like Back a Carcass or
Yeah.
Repulsion.
And they are a very funny live band.
Yeah.
Donde está el churro, mamonas?
Yeah, and it's funny to think that band started off as a side project for members of Fear Factory and Napalm Death and Faith No More.
Yeah.
Still is.
Still is,
is,
yeah. Yeah.
I mean, some of the members that are still there: Shane Embry, Jeff Walker still there, Daniel or Adrian Eraldson too. Still is to a certain part. One of the only members that's not there is Dino.
hmm
Yeah.
And my other honorable mention of underrated is a band from Spain that not many people know of, and they're all called Hades. Now they only released one EP. It's called Entre el Fuego y la Luz, and I believe this is the early stages of the wave of the Spain metal scene. They're just I don't know, they're like Iron Maiden, but in Spain. That's all I can say.
I got one Iron Maiden in Portugal, and I'll put ones that you should listen called Addict Demons.
Yeah, but they only lasted for probably like 2 to 3 years. But they've influenced a band that's in my list later on. And yep, that's about it. No.
Oh,
Yeah,
my mic
that's
got
about it.
muted. Whoops.
Uh,
All right, I was trying to say, Artur, your honorable mentions.
Before I get a bit with my honorable mentions, I think that is proper a bit just to talk just a few seconds about Stan Lee, this passing away that happened. I mean,
Yeah.
Stan Lee, he influenced a whole generation. I mean, he influenced me, Hannah, possibly. I don't know if you read any comics. I mean, Dylan, Ricky, Levi. It's all the same stuff. We grew up with Captain America, Spider-Man, and such. Although, in more recent years, I have pledged my allegiance, so to speak, to the DC more than a Marvel, but that's more because of Marvel's new SJW stuff and some of the movies we have been recently. But in honor of Stan Lee for influencing the whole generation, I and perhaps we only have one word to say to him: Excelsior. See you in heaven.
Excelsior.
Elsior.
Yeah, and good thing, and like I even said in the Facebook group yesterday, thank God he got 4 cameos filmed before he died. So all next year for Marvel is going to have Stan Lee in some capacity.
And all of them will be having in loving memory of Stan Lee, which is more than deserved. But
Yes.
back to our regularly scheduled program. Sorry. Okay. my underrated bands. I don't think in terms of underrated, I have one which many people shit on him. I don't know why they always credit Bathory as the first black metal band, but come on, give Venom its proper dues. Underrated by most everyone. They only, to many, they coined only the phrase black metal, which is ridiculous. I mean, Bathory perfected it. No question about it, and we can agree all upon it. But Venom started the whole thing, along with Celtic Frost and Valhammer. So, number one, I only put one honorable mention, one of each. Underrated, Venom, without certainty. Overrated. Overrated, and as I said, this list will put fanboys to will have all fanboys going after me. But Avenged Sevenfold, I mean, Dylan was explaining a bit. They're a bit slightly overrated. I think they're more than slightly overrated. I mean, not that those guys are any good. They are, but the only difference. No, sorry, not Avenged Sevenfold. No, it's Avenged Sevenfold. Yes, it's Avenged Sevenfold. There is one that I know everyone over there is going to kill. But underrated Venom, overrated Avenged Sevenfold.
Glad to hear some respect for Venom, though. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right, Hannah, your honorable mentions.
Well, I've only got one overrated honorable mention, and that is the German band Avantasia. I just think Tobias Sammet, the singer of them, is just another bad Bruce Dickinson wannabe. I hate his music, and every fucking year he either gets with his band Edguy or with Avantasia gets this 2-hour primetime spot at Wacken Open Air. And so many other bands deserve that spot, and not him.
He was the organizer, so...
Yeah, because he probably sucks some of their dicks, I don't know.
Sick bird!
We said that this episode was going to be controversial.
Mm-hmm.
It is. Sorry, but I don't think he deserves these kind of spots. There are so many other bands that deserve to play in the dark, and I mean, he gets 2 hours of playtime every fucking year, and it just pisses me off. And I think he's totally overrated, but I mean, there are people who like him. I'm not one of them. And then underrated bands.
I like it, but I like hearing Avantasia, but yeah, they tend to be a bit overrated.
Yeah, I did listen to their Did they have an album out this year? I'm thinking they did, but I heard the one before that.
Yeah.
I think it was last year.
Yeah, well, I heard their.
I don't care.
I heard one of their other albums, Ghost Lights. I thought musically it was really good. Vocally, yeah, I would agree with Hannah for sure.
It's not my cup of tea, and that's why I.
And to think, they come from Germany, the land that gave us Scorpions and Rammstein, and they have Avantasia.
Accept. They can give us Accept too.
Sodom,
And
Creator, Destruction, Tankard, Obscura,
The only
Necrophagist.
4 Teutonic thrash metal bands. The only 4 thrash metal bands that can arguably be a bit better than the American ones.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, but Avantasia.
But that is almost a discussion as old as time itself.
Yeah.
And then underrated honorable mentions. I have Cult of Luna on here because every album is fucking amazing. But I mean, they're not even doing this professionally. They tour like every 2 years or something like that, and nobody of them
Same
except
like Primordial.
Yep, it's living off the music, and I think they should be bigger, especially since their live shows are spectacular, and I can't wait to see them next year at Grasspop. And then my second honorable mention is, I've talked about them, An Abstract Illusion. They have only released one album, but it's fucking perfect, and they should be bigger. They should be a lot bigger.
Interesting choices for sure. Alright, now, I got 3 for each in the honorable mentions category. So for overrated, oh, this is where the pot's gonna get stirred even bigger. Alright, first, Kiss. I'm sorry to classic rock fans. I know there are a ton of classic rock fans of Kiss, but for me, I mean, I grew up listening to Kiss, but as I got older, I just started liking them a lot less and less over the years. Particularly because, well, Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley are 2 complete douchebags.
Oh,
Can't deny they got some good songs, my favorite being God of Thunder, but, I mean, come on. There are many better shock rock bands. Even though live they're incredible when you watch...
Alice Cooper!
Alice Cooper blows them out of the water, I would say, for sure.
Pink Diamond.
Yep.
And with this tour, their quote unquote last tour. I don't think it's gonna be the last tour.
No.
They're
just milking. They're just milking away, just like so many bands did. How many times we hear, sorry, Hannah, the Scorpions saying so many times, last tour.
Year. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same with the Scorpions.
And if this is their last tour, they have to put a straight in Peter Criss, at least for one song, at least at the end of the song.
Even if it's just for one day in America.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah. And it's kind of ironic, the 2 members that left, Ace and Peter, were the talented ones and the good people of the band, which is... So all props to them both. But nonetheless... Oh, go ahead, Ricky, you were going to say?
And I have one bone pick with the Rock Hall of Fame. When Kiss got inducted to the Hall of Fame, they didn't induct Eric Carr.
That was pretty bad. Alright, my second honorable mention and overrated is a band similar to Kiss, but I do like them better than Kiss, a band I grew up on, Slipknot. Can't deny it, Corey Taylor's a phenomenal singer, but yeah... Then again, over the years, new metal has become poison to me. Then again, Slipknot, you could argue that after Iowa, they kind of moved on to like just being just a metal band. But I am curious to hear their new album because I did think their last album was really the best one they did since Iowa. But I digress. And then finally, in the honorable mentions for overrated, a band that I used to love until like 2012 and 2013. Five Finger Death Punch. I like their first 2 albums. Way of the Fist and War is the Answer. I thought they were solid. But then you get to American Capitalist and the god-awful Wrong Side of Heaven, Righteous Side of Hell's. Ugh, like, Ivan Moody. Learn how to write better lyrics for your band.
People still listen to that.
Apparently so, and they had a new album called And Justice for None.
They're still in Madden games. They're still in Madden video games. They're still in WWE games. So
yeah,
probably they do.
By choice, though. That's the question.
I don't know.
By choice, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, Ivan Moody. I preferred him so much more when he was in Motograder, because at least was. At least with Motograder, lyrically and musically, it was a lot more experimental. But
and they're hell of a band live.
Yeah. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions for overrated. Now for underrated, you might notice a bit of a theme after this first one. Hannah may appreciate this one, maybe. Depends if she's heard them. Samael from Switzerland.
I love Samael!
Yeah!
I love Samael!
And I think Fenris from Dark Throne said it best. Whenever that second wave started booming in around 92, 93 in Norway, yeah, he said it. Why weren't any black metal bands taking the Samael route, where it was slower and more doomy, yet just as evil? And I love their first album, Worship Him. So brilliant. And then
Ceremony of Opposites, their magnum opus. Baphomet's Throne is still one of the songs that we still want to hear them live.
Yeah, of course, I only mainly know Samael's first 3 albums, where it was just straight up pure black metal, and before they became industrial symphonic black.
But the latest record is pretty amazing too.
I'll have to check that out for sure.
There is an amazing cover of Helter Skelter by the Beatles on there.
My second, now this is where the theme's going to start coming in. My second honorable mention for underrated is Rigor Mortis from Texas. Arguably, 1988 when their first album, trying to remember the name of it, it's not off my head, but yeah, their first album, arguably some of the heaviest thrash I've ever heard, almost borderlining death metal to an extent, because the lyrics were a bit comical and cheesy, but hey, I like comical, cheesy stuff sometimes. And musically, though, it's like as if you took Yngwie Malmsteen, classical guitar approach, put it through brutal thrash metal with like a very gruff vocal. Wow. And not to mention their guitarist, Mike, went on to be in Ministry, rest in peace. So, bit of an outlier in that sense. But yeah, Rigor Mortis, like their stuff. And then another thrash band, Arizona's Sacred Reich.
Sacred Reich.
Yeah, Sacred Reich. Basically, if I had to explain to anyone who's never heard of Sacred Reich, basically think Metallica riffs with the speed of Slayer and the lyrical and vocal approach of bands like Agnostic Front, and you get Sacred Reich. And I like their first couple releases, Ignorance and Surf Nicaragua. Awesome material back in the late 80s, early 90s. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions, and now we get to the actual lists. So basically we're going to rotate. We're going to start with overrated, end with underrated for each choice, and we do both of them when we go. So I'm going to start with my number 5 for overrated and underrated. Starting with overrated. Number 5 on my overrated. Still love this band, and it's a shame half of the members are gone, but Pantera. Love Pantera, but when it comes down to it, yeah.
And this is where we get to a certain theme.
Yes.
Pantera is my number 3 overrated.
Well, there you go. But, I mean, no denying, they are an amazing band, and they were certainly helpful for the mainstream metal in the 90s when people said it was dead, when in reality it was just growing. Pantera certainly helped it keep it alive in the mainstream sort of sense, along with Metallica and Megadeth during that time. But nonetheless, of course, Dimebag and Vinny, amazing musicians. Phil, great vocalist, despite being a douche.
Why I consider Pantera overrated. We still hear in radios Mouth of War, Walk, Cowboys from Hell, and all that stuff, but who made Pantera what it is? Not Phil Anselmo, not Rex Brown, the Abbott twins, Phil, Dime, and Vinny, and still, leave Pantera alone. Going Britney, leave Pantera alone. They're not going to reunite anymore. No matter how Vinny, or no matter how Rex and Phil want to do. Enough with Pantera already. Let them rest on their laurels. Let them rest as they are. Don't bring them back anymore. You're making them more overrated than they already are.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And then my number 5 for underrated is a band that I got into thanks to a certain wrestler by the name of CM Punk. And that band is... No. I had already heard them before that. No, my number 5 is Cro-Mags from New York. One of the pioneers of that New York hardcore scene. However, if you were to ask me how I would describe them musically, quintessential crossover thrash, despite their first album being hardcore. However, you could make the argument that New York hardcore was more metal than punk to begin with. Cro-Mags, especially those first 2 albums, Age of Quarrel, but Best Wishes was my favorite album of theirs. Oh my god. How did this band slip under the radar for me for so long until about 2012, 2013? I mean, I wish they would make another album, but of course there's the drama between Harley and John, especially after a few years ago with that stabbing incident. But nonetheless, Cro-Mags, I feel more people should give respect to them for helping to invent a scene back in the late 70s, early 80s, particularly Harley, the bass player. Underrated bass player. And, yeah, no, enough said. Dylan, do you have a number 5 for each?
I've been trying to put together a list while the honorable mentions were going. So this is going to have. I won't be doing this in any particular order.
Fair enough.
We start with the underdog, right? Or,
No, we start with the overdog. The overdog.
The overdog. Okay. So my first one that I'm going to say for overrated is the band Disturbed.
Yes.
Which one?
See, I really like their first 2 albums. The Sickness is really good, and shit, what was their second one called?
Believe.
Strict. No.
Yes, Believe.
Yeah.
Both of them are really good. They have some electronic influence in them, and I really like that because I'm just a huge fan of Fear Factory, Pitch Shift, them guy. So those first 2 albums really touched me in a certain way, not a bad way, like not a molestation way, but yeah, those first 2 albums are really good, but their later stuff isn't. It's pretty basic. It's just your run-of-the-mill hard rock band. There was some character in their first 2 albums. Even as far as 10,000 Fists, there are some good songs in there. Like, I really appreciate their cover of Land of Confusion because I'm a huge Phil Collins fan. But everything else, like, it's been 10,000 Fists ever since that's been released. That's every album, basically. So, yeah, that's my overrated.
All right.
And underrated?
Oh, yeah, underrated, too. Sorry. For my first underrated, I have Power Man 5000. Brother of Rob Zombie.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed everything he's put out. He's been very consistently good. Even if there's a couple of weak tracks on a few albums here and there, he'll with something just as strong. He keeps it fresh, really, is what I like about him. He's a Power Man 5000 is one that I'd like to pop in any day of the week, just to listen. Even his old stuff is good. Some of his new stuff is pretty good as well. But overall, Power Man 5000, really underrated.
And another band that worked with WWE. I mean, there was one time where the Dudleys came out to drop the bombshell.
Yeah, and I love that song. All right, Hannah, the floor is yours for this one.
Sorry, Arthur. My number 5 overrated band is Venom. For me, I
want to hear.
For me, the music isn't fresh from my perspective. It's just trash done bad. Nothing too innovative for me. I can't listen to it. There are a few songs maybe here and there, but for me the music is... I can't stand it. And I love black metal, but I can't stand Venom. I don't know. They get so much credit, especially in all the banger productions. And
but then there are some who give them too much credit, and others that don't give them too much credit. I mean, most of the time, I hear people that don't give them too much credit.
Yeah, sure, but for me, musically, it's just an abomination.
That's right to the heart. Right to the heart.
I'm sorry. And then number...
We agree to disagree.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. I mean, Venom is still a very important band, but for me, not really. And my number 5 underrated band... Actually, there are 2 bands on this position. First one is Bathory, because they are skipped in lots of documentaries about black metal. Banger didn't mention them almost at all, and I think they are, especially musically, very important in the development of the genre. I mean,
yes.
I think basically everybody can agree to that. I think they should deserve more honor and more recognition by some people, not by everyone, but by some people. And then the second band, number 5, is Ishan. I think Emperor is legendary, but Ishan, as a solo artist, doesn't get the recognition he deserves. I saw them a few
Yes.
weeks ago in a very small club with like 300 people, and he should be in a bigger club, in my opinion, because his music has been constantly on a
will
very,
always be
very
tagged
high
with
level.
Yeah.
He will
Yeah.
always be tagged with Emperor.
Yeah,
that's
but his solo discography is impressive. Nothing but impressive.
I'm not saying that is bad, but the problem with Ishan not going any further to me is that he will always be tagged as Emperor.
Yeah, that's the thing. But I mean, in my opinion, he should be bigger with his solo project. And
yes. All right, Ricky, you're number 5 for each.
My number 5 for overrated is Nirvana. Now,
I was considering putting them on my list too.
now,
I don't disagree.
hear me out. Are they important to the grunge era? Yes, they are. Do they get too much credit? Yes, they do. I mean,
So do Soundgarden.
yeah. I mean, Nirvana. I mean, and besides, I mean, the fashion with Nirvana. I mean, the people wearing the skull, the smiley face with Nirvana.
yeah.
I have one of the shirts, but that's because I'm a fan. I listen to their songs. I know the band. I know the history, so I have the right to wear it. But I mean, Nirvana.
Same thing happens with the Ramones and with the Misfits too.
Yeah, I mean, Nirvana is one of those bands that, over time, they have created this I guess myth that they were the kings of grunge. Well, when reality, they were not really. I mean, sure they were important, but bands like the Melvins, bands like Alice in Chains, bands like Soundgarden, I think deserve more credit. Especially Alice in Chains, they were much heavier than any other grunge bands in that time.
Yeah. You know who's another band in that scene that should get more credit too? Mother Love Bone.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Andy Wood.
hmm And my underrated band, number 5, is the MC5. Yeah,
You went
very
old
underrated.
school there. Yeah,
Very-
I would
I
agree with
went-
that too.
Yeah, I mean, they, along with Alice Cooper, Ted Nugent, and the Grand Funk Railroad from the Detroit area, they created a scene that at the time was quote-unquote heavy metal. I mean, how many times have you heard, not many people have heard on the radio Kick Out the Jam, which is probably their biggest hit.
Yeah.
It was so heavy at the time that you just go crazy with it, and I think they deserve more credit. And I think they're in the Hall of Fame. I don't know if they're in the Hall of Fame or not. If
I'm
they're
not
not,
sure
they should
either.
be.
Yeah.
If they're not, they should.
Don't know.
So MC5 underrated. Number 5.
Wow. Yeah. I should have thought more when it came to like the old school stuff. All right, Artur.
So, like I said, 0 F's given, and if you don't like it, leave the hall, as Manowar would say. But my first overrated band, and it's not Manowar, although they might be considered in certain areas overrated, which I don't disagree at all, but my first overrated band, it's a death metal band that I think they get too much credit, or they only get too many news just because the guy is fucking crazy. From Florida, I think. Deicide. I mean, I just don't see what the appeal of Deicide. I mean, just because the guy is an inverted cross that he branded with it, does that make him something special? And the music is not good. I mean, I know that I sometimes take shits on Cannibal Corpse for same thing over and over again and such, which kind of on some aspects that's death metal anyway on certain aspects. But Deicide, I just don't see why they get this big comeuppance and such. So overrated, DSI. Underrated. I put a bit like how I put two. One of them, Ricky has mentioned, Wasp, because they never got any credit for any of the stuff that they did for heavy metal, and a bit the transition period. And Blackie Lawless Live is just flawless. It's flawless. I mean, is awesome.
Yeah.
And the other is a symphonic metal band that somehow, some way, every time that we talk about these bands, most people would think Nightwish, Epica, Within Temptation, Serenia, or many others, but never they mention Therion. Therion, I don't know why. Not many people mention Therion in the symphonic metal stuff, which in certain aspects they started the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing symphonic stuff, not with one vocalist or two. They were doing with the full-on choirs.
Yeah.
Way before Taria joined Nightwish. Way before Sharon went to Within Temptation. So, underrated, Wasp, and Therion.
Yeah. And just to comment on Deicide, like, for me, at least with Deicide, like, I do love their self-titled debut and Legion, and to some extent Once Upon the Cross and Existential Redemption, but I would agree, everything else, nah, not for me. Alright, so now we get to our number 4 spots, and since Artur's fired up now, we'll let him start this one off.
Okay, number 4 on Overrated is the band is another band that a bit we mentioned, but just like Pantera, Axl Rose needs to die, so to speak. Guns N' Roses. Guns N' Roses. I mean, 12 years to put up a shitty album called Chinese Democracy, and now they milking on the cash cow for all these reunion tours, which, give the devil his credit, they were awesome, especially with Slash playing some of their songs. But Guns N' Roses, come on, there were better bands in the 90s than Guns N' Roses.
Oh, yeah.
That one hit me right in the heart. I mean, I
Sorry.
love Guns N' Roses. I love Guns N' Roses. They're one of my favorite bands of all time. But I got to admit, after the whole Chinese Democracy thing, or before the Spaghetti
Spaghetti
album?
Incident.
Spaghetti Incident.
Yeah. Spaghetti Incident, and with Axl trying to control the band, he just became a fucking asshole. And then when it did the MTV appearance back in 2002,
With Buckethead.
yeah, with Buckethead. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, plus
It
not to
hurt- it hurt
mention...
me like a-
not to mention Axl, I don't get why he refuses to bring Steven Adler back for these reunion shows. I thought when it came to early Guns N' Roses, Adler and Slash were like the heart and soul of the band, because Slash is great guitars. Adler, I think, is an underrated drummer and a hell of a guy. So,
And one
yeah.
thing to add, and this is to Axl. Why, if you have 4 of the original members and not Izzy Stradlin,
yeah,
Come on.
without Izzy
Where-
or Adler.
where the fuck is Izzy Stradlin?
Yeah,
I know where he is. He's still pissed off. He's still pissed off at Axl Rose, and he wants to cut his throat. But so did Slash before he joined in the reunion.
Yeah,
Which
Underrated
shocked me.
number.
It
Sorry.
shocked me when Axl Slash started to talk again. I was like,
yeah.
nah. I thought it was never gonna happen.
Money,
And
money, money.
Next thing you know,
And it did happen.
I would agree with Hannah on that.
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Yeah.
And now
Alright.
number 4, underrated. It's a death metal band that, well, just like Hannah said, does not get too enough credit on documentaries and stuff. And it's a band that I've vehemently defended on Banger TV several times. Bolt Thrower. I mean, Bolt Thrower as a death metal band, probably one of the first, along with Death, arguably. But
Yeah.
where in the world can you listen to a band that arguably has a perfect discography? You can name any Bolt Thrower album, and everyone will say it's a masterpiece. Mercenary probably not so much, but they don't get enough credit for putting melody in the death metal movement. Although Death was doing that a little bit earlier, but
Yeah.
and the thematics. I mean, Death was exploring spirituality, occultism, and all that, and Mesopotamic demons and such. Bull Thrower, we're going on war. We're going on full on war stories. So underrated, Bull Thrower, no question.
Yeah. All right, I'll get started on mine. For my number 4, Overrated. I know the gent kids are gonna come and kill me now, but Meshuggah is my number 4.
I thought about
Overrated.
them.
I mean,
Do we
I
have the
have-
same list, Levi? Do we have the same list?
maybe.
You're my number 2.
Oh
You're my
God,
number 2.
it happened again. Hey, podcast, everyone. Anything can happen. But yeah, Meshuggah. I mean, I like what I've heard of Meshuggah. I like Destroy, Erase, Improve. I did like their latest album, but I mean, for me, I just can't get into them overall as a whole because I'm not a big fan of those 8-string guitars. Because it's like whenever I want to hear music, I want to hear it for the music, not the da-dum, 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 da-dum. But at least with Meshuggah, they were able to do it right, whereas every other band that kind of copied them are just second-rate rip-offs. No disrespect to Periphery, I've liked some of their stuff, but you can't recreate the magic that Meshuggah did have. Despite how I feel about Meshuggah, they're number 4 on my overrated list. My number 4 for underrated. Now, this band gets a lot of love for their first album, but the following 2 releases they put out in 89 and 91, I feel don't get enough credit. My number 4 underrated, Sarcophago. I feel like
Midnight
people,
Queen.
yeah, because like INRI, amazing album, amazing start of the precursor to the second wave of black metal. But the Rotting EP, when they kind of transitioned to more of a death metal sound and with some doom stuff and thrash thrown in there. But then you get to Laws of Scourge, 91, one of the first tech death albums, or prog death albums, however you want to say it. Yeah, Midnight Queen, love that song. Screeches from the Silence. I heard the high note on that song. I'm thinking, is this Tom Araya singing over death metal? But it was brilliant.
A little bit of a comment. Everybody talks about Brazilian metal, but they only mention more or less Soulfly, Sepultura, Chrism now, and Angra, but they rarely mention Sarcophago.
Yes. Yeah, then again, any other Brazilian band I feel could be interchangeable with Sarcophago. Volcano, more particularly Mutilator. But I went with Sarcophago because, yeah, they get all the credit in the world for INRI, but people should give the Rotting EP and Laws of Scourge a chance, for sure. Plus, not to mention, Laws of Scourge, probably my favorite production of any album I've heard. It was borderline raw and well produced. It was perfect. Ricky, your number 4 for each.
Alright, number 4 for Overrated, and Arthur and you, Levi, already, I guess, started the conversation with it, and that's Avenged Sevenfold. Now, Avenged Sevenfold is one of those bands that are like at the borderline of overrated and underrated.
I would
In a
agree
way.
with that too, yeah.
I mean, first of all, the latest album wasn't too good. Hail to the King was just the Black Album ripoff.
Even though I liked it, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, I like it too.
Yeah.
But I always go from their self-titled and Nightmare. Those are probably my 2 favorite Avenged Sevenfold albums. But again, I don't blame them for, I guess, quote-unquote, selling out, but they become, I guess, the band that you love to hate. Kind of like another band that I'm going to mention later on the list.
I
And
think I
If
may
it's
know
what
that.
I think it is, then we are in agreement.
And for my underrated number 4 is Canada's own Anvil.
Oh!
Mm.
Anvil.
Yeah.
Canadian Fresh.
Anvil. Now, the documentary made on Anvil is really pretty good, but at the same time, it's kind of sad that this one's band toured in Japan for just like one tour. Didn't get as much big as they should have gone.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just sad. Like I said, they should have gone more big. I mean, they were the reason bands like Metallica, Megadeth got their influence.
Pretty much the big influence on the American thrash scene.
Yeah, I mean, even their latest album's pretty good. And I've seen some of their live videos, and they like 100 people, maybe 50 people, when they should be in 1,000 people, 2,000 people. 500.
Probably like the same realm as probably in the same crowds like Cannibal Corpse. They should be getting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cannibal Corpse, no. I mean, I have a.
Well, what I was meaning was the size capacity of a crowd.
I understand. But whenever I think about what Ricky said about Anvil, I think about another band that I'm going to mention, and I think about Razor. But Razor, they weren't that big because it's their own fault. They did not went to America where the thrash movement was being developed. To Razor, that's their own fault.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, Kamikaze.
All right, for my next overrated, I'll get them out of the way because they were mentioned already. Nirvana. So absolutely, yeah, they were very influential when they were around. But I'd say, without a doubt, that other grunge bands were able to do what they did, but way better. Nirvana's few albums, like, they're pretty strong, but, like, what a lot of other bands, such as, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, were able to do with grunge. I'd even put Helmet on the list. But what they were able to do surpassed the vast majority of Nirvana. And, like, their success is why they're known. Like, if it weren't for Nevermind, like, who knows what grunge would look like today? But still, like, calm down, guys. They didn't flip everything upside down. Like, they were part of what flipped upside down, but they didn't single-handedly do it.
Yeah. And if anything, people should give more credit to the Melvins for creating that scene.
Oh yeah.
Very, very underrated band as well.
Yeah.
Not very underrated haircut.
Yeah.
Oh, Buzzo's hair. Oh Lord. All right, but
that's iconic, like signature. This look, it fits him.
Yeah. All right, your number 4 on underrated.
Yeah, and for this one, I might have given it away earlier when I said underdog instead of underrated. But my number 4, I guess you could call it, underrated band, is the New York hardcore band Underdog. They pioneered 90s punk rock before, then they probably didn't even realize. Just in one album, they were able to turn the New York hardcore scene upside down, and when Richie went on to form Into Another, which is like probably one of my all-time favorite bands ever. But the baseline for the future of New York hardcore, Underdog, their only album. It's so good from start to finish. I can't say enough. Check it out. It's fantastic.
I would say that as a scene, the New York hardcore scene is as much underrated as the United States black metal scene as well. I mean, Profanatica, Judas Iscariot. There were some good bands there. Yeah.
All right, Ricky.
No.
Wait,
Oh wait,
Hannah.
you already did. Oh yeah, Hannah. I forgot.
Hannah.
How could I be
Never
that?
forget Hannah.
Sorry. My number 4 overrated band is Ghost.
Oh!
I had a cinch. I had a cinch she was gonna say Ghost.
I almost added on my list. I was just close to that in it.
And the reason Ghost is on here is the latest record, Prequel, and the EP, Pope Star. I mean, the first 3 records I love them, and I used to be a very, very, very big Ghost fan. But prequel, ever since all the other members left, Ghost sounds like shit, like every other 80s glam metal rock band. And it's just a ripoff. If I want to listen to glam metal, I listen to old 80s bands and not to Ghost. For me, the latest album is just trash and nothing that Ghost used to stand for, and that's why they're on this list. Because for me, Ghost never was only Tobias; it was also about the others. And you can hear that, for example, Martin and Simon are missing. It's just the music is lacking for me, and that's why they're on this list. Sorry.
Now, you all know that I gave Prequel a 5 out of 5 rating. I thought it was a great album. But
Me too. I liked it too.
Yeah, but
I give it a 2 out of 5.
As time has gone by, I mean, I still stand, but it doesn't just compare to like Melioria. I mean, that album to me is just
obvious.
Yeah, for me,
perfect.
If you listen to Opus Eponymous, the songs are still great and fresh. If you listen to Dance Macabre for like the 200,000th time, it's like
there's only one song that I like on Prequel, which is Faith. Is the only thing that I consider as close to the original Ghost.
That's true.
And then not to mention with the lawsuit, I mean.
Yeah, that's what I think was the turning point for a lot of fans when that lawsuit happened. That was pretty. Yeah, I would say Tobias was pretty much a dick in that situation.
But thank God or Satan, whatever, that Martin wasn't in the lawsuit.
That's the only positive thing about the lawsuit.
Even though Martin could have, and he should have, gotten some of that royalties, Martin decided to leave without any controversy, without any bullshit.
The only smart member in that case.
Which it's just great. I mean, and then he went back with Hannah got the cartel, and which thanks to Hannah, I got into them.
And he's such a nice guy, and Tobias is such an asshole. Sorry. Starting with my number 4 underrated band is Insomnium, a melodic death metal band from Finland. And the reason they are on here is if you're talking about melodic death metal, you're only talking about the Gothenburg scene. But
the Amon Amarth.
Yeah, and the Amon Amarth. But always about Swedish bands, and Insomnium, every record is awesome. And they play on small stages during daytime. They should deserve more.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Yeah.
Especially the latest record, Winter Tales. Awesome. From start to finish, first to last note, amazing musical journey, and just should deserve a lot more recognition and everything else.
And I guess for the time being, we lost Kamikaze, but he might be back. All right, so did we get Ricky's number 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
All
right, and there he is, Kamikaze. I figured that was going to happen at some point, but
always happens.
To somebody. It was usually Ricky, so.
That's why I'm a McDonald's. Legend.
Well, there you go. Yeah, Kamikaze Ricky has to go to McDonald's to do this. Otherwise, if he's at home, he just...
You know what? When I first appeared on the NASCAR Weekly podcast, I had to record it at my grandma's house because the internet was so bad at home.
Alrighty, so now we get to our top 3, and I shall start this one. Now, this is going to be a bit interesting, but my number 3, Overrated, one of my all-time favorite bands, but even I can admit that after 1990, not so much. Slayer. Kerry King wants to probably kill me now. However, I love...
that's Glenn Batten to me.
Yeah, I love their first 5 albums and the Haunting the Chapel EP. Some of my favorite albums of all time. Hell Awaits, maybe my number 5 favorite album of all time now. But after Seasons in the Abyss, Divine Intervention through to Christ Illusion, that run, kind of an up and down roller coaster ride. It was like some of it was good, some of it was bad. World Painted Blood, I think, was
enjoyed very much Repentlessness.
Yeah, there's some good stuff on Repentless, but if we were to talk about their later albums, I like World Painted Blood more than their last few albums. But yeah, Slayer, it's like, the big problem I have with Slayer is their fan base. They're so, like, if you try to get into a debate with a Slayer fan and they just go, fuck you, you're stupid, I hate you, Slayer. Then it's not...
Same thing with certain fanboys that I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, and that's sort of my issue with Slayer is their fan base just thinks that Slayer is the best of all time. I mean, they are one of the best metal bands to ever exist. However, they're not the best. Just putting that out there. But my number 3 and underrated is, when we talk about pioneers and death metal, we always talk about Death, Morbid Angel, Obituary, Bolt Thrower, you name it.
Not
but
as
the
much
one,
Bolt Thrower as I mentioned.
not as much Bolt Thrower, but still, when you talk about early pioneers. But Possessed, early Possessed, from Seven Churches, another one of my favorite albums. Beyond the Gates is so overlooked. Like, yeah, the production was kind of crap, but there are some good songs on that album, like March to Die, the title track, No Will to Live, when they kind of went a little proggy. I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do on their new album that's supposedly coming out in 2019.
And especially talking about a band whose main vocalist was confined to a wheelchair and still tours to this day, put a lot of pop prima donnas to shame.
Exactly, yeah. Total respect to Jeff Becerra for being able to continue touring and singing despite having to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Yeah, and it's funny, back in the 80s, I could have mistaken Jeff Becerra for Dave Mustaine as far as how he looked. He looked so much like Dave Mustaine back in the day, which is kind of funny.
And one thing, he was so young when he did Seven Churches. I think it was
the whole band was young when they did that album.
They were still in high school.
Yeah, and Larry Lalonde, who eventually went to Primus, played guitar for Possessed first couple albums, and he was such a good player. Still is a great player, but holy crap. But yeah, Possessed, I feel, when it comes to discussing death metal, even though I personally consider them more thrash, that helped to sort of invent death metal to an extent by coining the term. Well, then again, you could say Hellhammer coined it, Death coined it. It's a debate that will go on forever. But Possessed should get more respect from death metal fans after the 80s, because, yeah, they were highly respected when the genre started, but after it exploded, they hadn't gotten as much of a legacy as, say, Morbid Angel or Obituary or Death, so... That's my number 3s. Hannah, your number place.
Since I already... You know, speaking of... Drei. Since I already talked about Avantasia, I have to talk about Doro.
What?
I had a feeling that was going to come up. I don't know why.
I mean, she did great things with Warlock, and I like the early Warlock stuff, but nowadays she has turned to this kind of Wackel mascot. She plays there every year, and her voice gets worse every year, and she talks more every year, and it just gets more annoying. The more often you see her, the more annoying it gets, and it's just such a shame that she gets these spots other bands deserve. And the more I see her, the more annoying I find her. And sorry, Doro. I mean, she took this kind of position after Remy died, and it gets more annoying every year.
Yeah, I would probably say that too.
She should just retire. sorry. And then my number 3 underrated band is actually this place is shared by 2 bands, and I'm talking about both Primordial and Enslave. Because I think both bands were highly important in the history of black metal and developed their own kind of sound and are very unique.
Primordial would put more in the black/folky type.
Yeah, but still, both were very important for extreme music and in this kind of black metal corner. And they both have released awesome records. I like every record.
Very consistent.
Yeah, very consistent. And they're kind of developing their sound the older they get and the more records they release. And they still play in venues with like 300, 400, 500 people.
I was there. I was there at the last show that Primordial did here in Portugal.
Me too. I was there in Germany.
They did 2.5 hours here, and there was around 200, maybe 300 people. But I'm not seeing Primordial in like big arenas, big venues and stuff. I don't think that they're banned for it. I mean, there are some bands that are made.
I think the size or the venues is fine. I think it's fine, but But I just think they should get more recognition and they should be bigger, especially when they play at festivals.
Festivals? But festivals, it has to be a kind of a proper environment. I mean, I don't see Primordial playing like sun shining and all that stuff. I'm seeing like playing in the evening or sunsetting.
Yeah, sure, but you know, on some festivals, I mean, Enslave play during the day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, in a very and shit like that. And I just think it's unjustified regarding how awesome and important they are for the genre.
Yeah, and I think when I watched back the Lockhorns episode when they talked about Best of 2015 and they had Tim from Brave Words, I think he said it best, Enslaved should be like the new Opeth as far as like big bands taking them out on tours, like Megadeth took Opeth out for Gigantour in 2006. Kind of wish that a big band would take Enslaved down, expose them to a bigger audience and get them more into it. Like, I would say an ideal big band that should take Enslaved out on a tour would be like Judas Priest or something.
Oh, no question. No question.
But
how about this Iron Maiden and Enslaved?
Yeah, Iron Maiden would be a good one to open for.
I don't think so, because their styles don't mesh very well. Judas Priest, yeah. If especially they play like Touch of Evil, War, the Four Horsemen, and all that stuff. I mean, yeah, but it has also to mesh. I mean, Iron Maiden and Enslaved, not so much. Judas Priest and Enslaved, no question.
Yes. Alrighty, Dylan.
We're on 3, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
The last 3.
Okay. Oh, God. Nope. My computer's going crazy, so... Okay.
When does it never?
I know, right? So, for my number 3 on Overrated, might get some people angry about this. Is a group that I have a lot of respect for, and they have some very good releases, but the problem is that they get the Nirvana treatment. My number 3 on Overrated is 9 Inch Nails. So I love Pretty Hate Machine. That album gets all the credit that it deserves. But afterwards, you know, it's good. I pop it in any day of the week. But I'm not going to call it revolutionary. What?
Not Downward Spiral?
Downward Spiral? Well,
the album.
Yeah, Downward Spiral.
Yeah, he's another lagger.
I'm sorry, this is a mess.
It's okay. At least we were able to get a majority of what you said. That's all that matters.
Have you seen me dropping out of the call?
Just once.
Once.
Right. That's my internet adapter overheating, and literally what I have to do to fix it is put it into my freezer to cool it down.
Shit.
Damn.
That's crazy. All right, your number 3 and underrated.
Number 3. So this band, they just got a new album out in September, but I haven't got to hear it yet. It's the hard rock band out of Maryland. It's Clutch.
Clutch.
I love their 2015 album, Psychic War. Every song off that is fantastic. And their early stuff, people are always confused. Like no one... if you've heard Clutch at some point, you may not even know it because some of their stuff is strange. Like, their early stuff is extremely strange. But they have a lot of albums and a lot of content, so they got something for it. They're very well versed. I still haven't heard any album though.
Yeah. I haven't heard Clutch in a long time myself, so yeah. All right, yeah. All right, Artur.
This time I'll start a bit with my underrated because overrated.
We know you're Pantera. Yeah.
Pantera, I'll just add to the Pantera discussion that, I mean, their first 3 albums are great, but afterwards, and all the infighting that people, and I will get a lot of heat for this. Most of those fights, I would assume that Phil Anselmo started the whole stuff. I mean, he was going through the heroin and all the drugs that he was taking,
and his back being in bad shape.
Exactly. While most of the time, the only drugs, so to say, that the rest of Pantera were taking were booze.
Yeah.
Jack Daniels.
But
the Black Tooth Grin. Coke and Crown.
Pantera is overrated because of the Abbott brothers. Not the Abbott brothers; they're overrated. But the band as a whole, they're overrated. And mainstream radio, and some worldwide DJs, they put them as if they were metal's answer to in the 90s. Which in the 90s we know many stuff weren't being developed, especially the black metal scene and stuff. But underrated. I've put vocalists because there have been so many vocalists in rock or heavy metal, how you want to put it, that have played in great bands, and somehow, some way, they're great outside those bands. First 2 examples that come out straight: Ripper Owens, who is an amazing singer, but when he was with Judas Priest, he was working way below his talent, and it was one of the few times that he could sing Painkiller without destroying his vocal cords. And another one, we can talk about power metal vocalists all the time, and Hannah probably knows some of them: Kain Hansen, Michael Kiske, Hansi Kirsch, and many others. But why no one mentions Jord Lande, the vocalist from Masterplan, who has a solo album right now, who I praised for having one of the best covers of all time in The Perfect Strangers. But there are many vocalists, and these 2 are my clear examples: Ripper Owens and Jord Lande.
All right, Ricky.
Oh, here we go. For my number 3, it's 2 bands. I'll give you a hint. They're from the 90s. They go together as brother and sister in a way. They're from new metal. Alright, I'm giving you the hints.
I'm going to say, Limp Bizkit and Korn.
Limp Bizkit and Korn.
Yeah.
First with Korn. Korn is highly regarded as the pioneer band of new metal, which they are. But I mean, over the years, there's some albums of them that I'm like, why? Why? Like, their latest album's pretty good.
Yeah.
and especially over the time they become I don't want to say like a parody, but you've seen like a whole bunch of the memes. They're like
Yeah.
almost like they're like a meme, almost like a meme band, but not really. Now William Biscuit, oh boy,
Oh, we could do a whole show on bashing Limp Bizkit.
we can do a whole show with Limp Biscuit.
I
I
would
got
bash Limp Bizkit and Deftones. I mean, Deftones to me are just as Ricky described Korn.
Fred Durst for being the asshole that he is. He could
Yeah, it's
probably-
like Fred Durst. He seems like a guy who never aged past 12.
Eh,
No.
no.
Nah. Nah.
I mean, they have to be between the biggest asshole between Axl and Fred Durst. I'd go with Fred Durst.
Axl Rose is a pretty shitty asshole. So
I know, but
It's
Fred
almost-
I don't know.
Most
I would say Axl is a bigger asshole, at least when it came to everything. Fred Durst, he's just an immature child, which
He's
you
intelligent.
deal with that all the time.
Such a big asshole.
and that cover of
Behind Blue Eyes.
Behind Blue
Yeah.
Eyes for the whole. Oh my
Halle
god!
Berry cameo.
It was just horrible. And the reason I got into Limp Bizkit was because I get WWE. There was the Undertaker's theme song.
Same here. This
Roland.
is the same thing with me. Yeah.
I mean, he's got like 2 to 3 good songs, but as a whole band,
Way
not a
below
fan.
the pay grade.
Yeah. And then for underrated,
But then again,
Yeah.
why did these bands were pushed to the moon and past Pluto and all that stuff? Mainstream media. They were looking for another wannabe band, and people were tired of the boy bands that were coming out and Green Day. But
alright. And
but
for
I mean, they wanted
my-
Limp Bizkit, and that Woodstock performance. They're the reason why Woodstock is dead.
The last Woodstock had to go that way.
I mean, I'm sorry, but I would say ICP. They also get a lot of hate, but they didn't thrash Woodstock like Limp Bizkit did.
Yeah, I would agree
Yeah.
with
And now my number 3 underrated is Saxon.
What?
Don't tell me. Yeah, it's Saxon. My number 3 is Saxon.
that. I'm gonna take a guess. That's Artor's number 1 underrated.
One.
I'd say.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert! Spoiler alert!
Hey, it's nice now not to do with Hannah. Now I'm with you.
But ours was like perfect. Both number ones.
Oh yeah, that was the
Yeah, in
perfect
that
one.
last episode. Yeah, that was brilliant.
No.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Yeah. But with Saxon, I mean,
But I'll talk. In the same way, I'll talk about Saxon as well. So
Yeah.
don't-
yeah, I mean, the new wave of British heavy metal. I could have easily gone with Grim Reaper. I could have easily gone with General.
Oh, yeah.
Witchfinder General.
Yep.
But Saxon's one of those bands that they had some huge success in America. I mean, they still have a lot of success in America, but they always get shattered by like Iron Maiden, Motorhead, Def Leppard to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And not many people talk about them. I mean, they have Crusaders, a great album. That's my favorite song of all time, Crusader.
Allegedly, Lars Ulrich's favorite band when he was growing up.
Yeah. I mean, same thing with Diamond. Diamond's really underrated as well. I think Easting got with Diamond Head.
I would agree with Diamond Head as well. And not to mention, Saxon's been one of the most consistent bands over the course
Oh, yeah.
of the last
Yeah.
nearly 40 years. Putting out albums every 2-3 years.
I mean, and they're all great albums. I mean, sure, they're not as great as their 80s material, but they still kick ass tunes to put on the car and just go.
One of their more recent albums that came out, I think it was Thunderbolt. Or there's one song that is just so good that I can't stop listening. It's called Nosferatu the Vampire's Waltz. I mean, I love that song, and I can put it right there in the middle with Princess of the Night or Eagle Has Landed and all that stuff as some of the great songs of
Heavy Metal
Saxon.
Thunder is a great song.
Hmm.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, Saxon, my number 3.
And now we get to our top twos for each. And I'll let Mr. Kamikaze start this one off.
Alright, starting with Overrated.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a band that introduced me to the deathcore scene. And that band is Whitechapel.
Yeah.
The Somatic Defilement really, I still enjoy it to this day. But ever since then, it's been the same album over and over and over and over. And they just got to put it out every 2 years, of course, so got to cash in as much as possible.
Yeah, and I got a new one coming soon.
Yeah. I have not heard a good Whitechapel song since 2012, and I'm honestly not even mad. Alright. And for Underrated, this is a kind of a fusion group. They're called Only Crime.
Throwing a curveball in there, aren't you?
Yeah. So I think they've released 3 albums now. Their most recent in 2014, and everything on them has been super. I really like their most recent album, Explosion. Overall, they're kind of like they're hard to describe, but you just have to kind of give it a listen to understand. But yeah, they're my number 2 underrated. Is there someone backing up a semi outside my house? Can you
I could hear that too.
Yeah.
What's moving in the neighborhood?
Oh, God.
Just kind of construction going on.
Alright, Hannah.
My number 2 overrated bands are actually 2 bands. First one is Kiss, and second
Talked
one
about
is
it.
Talked about it. I'm kind of excited to see them next year at Graspop, but on the other hand, not really. And then the other band is Limp Bizkit. And I just think their music is so bad. I've seen them at Graspop this year, and I was standing there, and it was only remixes of other songs, and everybody was going crazy, and it was like, why are you going crazy? Because it was so bad. And their music, I think they are overrated, they are shit. Sorry. And then my number 2 underrated band is a Swedish band called Tribulation.
Tribulation.
I love the kind of music they're doing. It's kind of their own thing, mix of gothic, mix of death metal, mix of horror and classic heavy metal. And
The latest novel, I enjoyed it very much.
that would be in my in my top 10 albums of the year for sure. I think they're doing something very unique, and they deserve more recognition.
Alrighty, Ricky.
Levi, you're probably gonna hate me for this. My number 2, Cannibal Corpse.
I figured you or Artur was going to have Cannibal on your list. I kind of had a feeling.
Don't have it, but I consider them a bit like that.
Oh yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. Cannibal Corpse are very important to the death metal scene, but that Cookie Monster voice just doesn't make it for
Chris
me.
Barnes.
Chris Barnes,
Corpse
especially.
Grinder more.
And I mean, Corpse Grinder. I mean, the guy has no fucking neck. I mean, come on, he has no neck. But I think they're very repetitive, album after album after album. Don't get me wrong. They have some great songs, but again, they're just so repetitive. I could have easily gone with Obituary, but Obituary is probably more underrated than overrated.
I would agree with that too.
But I mean, they give him too much credit when they easily could give credit to a band more like Possessed or Voltor. They deserve more credit than Cannibal Corpse. And for my underrated, It's a band that I mentioned before that, from one of my honorable mentions, that they inspired them, and they're from Spain. They're called Ángeles del Infierno, or the Hells Angels. This is a band that are pretty big, and they're in Spain and Latin America. They fill up arenas, but they never had
They're
a.
as big as Mago de Oz.
Yeah, they're pretty big, but when it comes to America, Europe, the rest of Europe, they're not as well talked about, which is a shame because Ángeles del Infierno, they opened up for some huge bands in the 80s. They opened up for ACDs, they opened up for Iron Maiden, they opened up for other bands that I can't mention that I'm forgetting, but they're like if Iron Maiden and Judas Priest had a bastard baby. That's all I can say.
That's an interesting way to describe it. Okay. I don't want to prolong this anymore, so I'll go ahead on mine. Oh god, this is... Well, I was going to save you for last on number 2, but we all know your number 2 in Overrated, wasn't it, Meshuggah?
Yes,
correct?
it was Meshuggah, but
Okay.
it is connected with my number 1 Overrated that I'm going to, because Meshuggah, everybody tells me it is an acquired taste. You need to listen to them properly and such, but I just don't see it. I've never been down to with that style and such, and everyone almost crucifies me to saying that you're a hater of Meshuggah and stuff. I just don't like it. I mean, I don't like Meshuggah, and I think that they're overrated. There are better bands that do stuff like that. And as for underrated, we talked a bit about Canadian thrash, as some of you as you mentioned a bit, Anvil stuff. My underrated band is not so much Anvil or Razor; it's Annihilator. Annihilator has 2 albums who are considered thrash classics in Alice in Hell and Never Never Land. Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Mickey Savage, the original vocalist of Alice in Hell. But and I've mentioned this, and I've mentioned this when Lockhorns made the thrash metal debate. I mean, underrated in so many aspects. Jeff Waters is an amazing guitarist who has never given any credit for it, and that's why for me, number 2 underrated, Annihilator.
Okay. Oh god, this is the part of my list where I feel like I want to go kill myself now. Okay. Now my number 2 overrated. Spoiler alert, my favorite band of all time, Metallica. Let me guess, I was your number 1, Ricky.
That was my number 1. I guess I got my payback.
Yes, there you go. Well, I mean, listen, no deny, Metallica's my favorite band of all time, but even a die-hard Metallica fan like me can say I would agree that they're overrated, because, I mean, no doubt, first 4 or 5 albums, amazing. Kill 'Em All through to the Black Album, I love. Even though I like Load and Reload, yeah, I'll even agree that was sort of when they kind of jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Saint Anger kind of hammered that point home. Thank God they came back and put out 2 other albums, Death Magnetic and Hardwired. Yeah. Even though I like Hardwired more than Death Magnetic, I would say that the song The Day That Never Comes is my favorite song out of both of those albums. But, yeah, Metallica did jump the shark a little bit. Thank God they have come back and have made 2 damn good albums in the last 10 years to kind of make us somewhat forget about Saint Anger. And funny enough, Saint Anger, I feel, is an album that, in my opinion, has aged well over the last 15 years, because there is much worse shit out there than Saint Anger. Point that out.
And then going with the whole Metallica thing, I mean, with the whole Napster thing that happened, Lars.
Yeah, the media painted Lars out to be the biggest bad guy, the biggest heel in metal music. Even though in hindsight, he was kind of right. So...
Yeah, but Metallica, they're probably one of the... like important bands next to Sabbath, Priest, Maiden, and the
Oh, yeah,
Metallica.
no doubt.
But I mean, do they get a lot of credit? Yes, they do. Do they deserve the credit? Sometimes I think they do.
Yes.
But I mean, they got bands like Anthrax, Megadeth, Death Angel, Exodus. I could go on. They deserve a bit more credit for in a way building the thrash metal.
Yeah. Oh, Ricky, even at McDonald's has. Oh, there he is.
Or automatically think Slayer, which I was gonna have Slayer on the list, but I was like, nah, Metallica's more overrated than Slayer.
Yeah. But my number 2 in underrated, ironically, another pioneering thrash band. The big band that came out in the early years of thrash in that 79, 1980 period that doesn't, in my opinion, does not get as much love than the other pioneers like Exodus and Anthrax and Metallica and Slayer. Overkill. Love Overkill. Bobby Blitz, in my opinion, the most underrated vocalist in the history of heavy metal. You know, he's got that almost AC/DC charm to him. Dee Dee Verney, a crushing bass player, and any other members they've had over the years are great in their own right. And stuck out with a thrash and also eventually to a more post-thrash sound in the late 90s. But they're one of the few bands that never really followed any trends, which I totally respect. And, I mean, some of my favorite albums in metal history have come from Overkill, like Taking Over and especially The Years of Decay. Amazing thrash albums, and there you go. Alright, now we get to our number ones, where things... I got a feeling with my number one... Well, I'll go last on this one again because I want to preface it, but I'll let Hannah start off this one.
Again, 2 bands share my number 1, and that's mostly because I have never seen concerts as bad as these 2 ones. And I think in general they are very overrated. We already talked about them. Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses. I've seen Motley Crue on their farewell tour because a friend dragged me along, and the arena was empty as hell. I mean, we got upgraded seats. That has never happened to me. And they had Alice Cooper as support, and I mean, everything was great when he played. Everybody was happy, and then Motley Crue came on stage, and it was just bad. People left, and they paid like over €100 to see them. And then the same with Guns N' Roses this year at Graspop. Everybody was there to see them, and I was watching Heilung because Guns N' Roses played like 3 hours, and I didn't want to see all 3 hours. And when Heilung finished, that's right. And when Heilung was finished, I was like, yeah, let's go and watch some Guns N' Roses. But people, masses of people were just walking out of there. And I walked in, saw like 2 or 3 songs, and then decided to leave because his voice was, X's voice was so bad. And I think those were probably the 2 worst concerts I have ever seen. And the music, everything about them, they're way overrated.
Alright, and your number 1 and underrated.
My number 1 underrated band is Leprous from Norway. Again, a band, I think they're very unique. Every album is great, but they're playing at small venues, and they should be bigger because Einar's voice developed so much over the last few years. I think they should be a lot bigger. They're growing, but they should be bigger because there are so many bands that are getting big, but it's very slow progress, and they deserve more credit, especially during festivals when they play like at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., and there are bands that do not deserve to play at later times, I think they should be at those top spots. Or at least play a bit later than they are currently playing.
Yeah, and a fun fact for those who don't know, actually, with Leprous, they're, if I'm not mistaken, I believe they're Ishan's backing band for when he plays his solo stuff.
They used to be. Aina still plays with them from time to time, but not anymore. Ishan has a different backing band right now.
It's interesting. Alright, yeah.
Sorry.
Kamikaze.
According to Ty Dillon, right?
Yeah, apparently so.
Alright. I'm prepared for any hate that this may get me. My number one overrated, a.k.a.
Ooh.
Japanese animation.
Look at Ricky, he's mad now.
Everyone died. The end.
Oh, God. Continue.
Now, if Kamikaze doesn't know, that's my favorite band of all time. So I can't.
And it's on my top 6 too.
I mean, I even knew that they're overrated, but I didn't want to put them on the list because I know I was gonna kind of like, in a way, putting my back against them, but I just didn't have the balls to put them on my list.
Right. Now, I understand the influence that they have, and they have great music. All of Back in Black is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I know Thunderstruck is a pretty good album, too. But they get way too much credit for saving metal, you know. Sorry.
All right.
As a hard rock band, they are fantastic. And I heard that they put on great live shows back in the day.
They still do. But just like I said previously with Guns N' Roses and such, I mean, how many original members are today in AC/DC? Not just Cliff, which is scary. It's just Cliff. No, Angus and Angus. But Malcolm's gone. Brian is deaf. And Phil Rudd is in prison. And one of the worst decisions that they made, still I defend it. Why with Axl? There are many. They should have gone with Mark Turmillo. That's now the vocalist of Accept.
Yeah.
Or the vocalist of Airborne.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Airborne every day of the week.
All right, your number one underrated.
Number one underrated is a Polish black metal band, Rajuska.
What?
Now, they only have one album officially, but just like AC/DC, you know, I've heard that their live shows are phenomenal.
Was it Batushka or?
Yes.
Ah. I couldn't understand it. I was like Majesta or something like that.
Sorry, I kind of have like early onset laryngitis.
They are awesome. They are awesome.
They are absolutely awesome.
Alrighty. Oh boy, Artur, you're number ones.
Machine gun ready? Time to destroy some fanboys. My number one overrated band, TOOL. Tool. I don't.
I should have known you were gonna go with Tool.
I mean, I've heard Tool's albums so many times, as far as I can remember. I've heard Anima, I've heard Lateralus, I've heard every single one of them. And I'm a big industrial metal fan. I like KMFDM, I like Godflesh, I like Fear Factory, of course, and Ministry. But these guys putting on these huge songs, it's like Opeth, but unlistenable. especially since the music transitions from one thing to another. And I know that they're coming out with a new album. What has it been? Just like Chinese democracy. 12,
Yeah.
14 years, 15 years?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be good, but Tool is even coming here to Portugal on their newest tour in June, and it's already sold out.
Whew.
But to me, I never got to the appeal of Tool. I think they're underrated. I think they're overrated as hell. And I know that, and I've heard so many people saying the same thing about Meshuggah. It is an acquired taste, but Tool overrated as hell. And just like their Minor James Keenan as the other band, a perfect circle too. Both of them underrated. Underrated. We talked about it before. Saxon. There have been so many bands coming out of the Nawaba movement. I could easily put here Tigers of Pantang, Raven, Savage, and so many, but I just don't think that Saxon, a band that has toured America, toured Europe, toured Japan, toured the world, have been given their proper credit. And we do have all those songs that we just mentioned: Eagle Has Landed, Crusader, 747, Strangers in the Night. I mean, Saxon should be more recognized than it is.
All right, Ricky.
All right. Well, since already you, Levi, mentioned my number one, which is Metallica, I go with my number one underrated. This is a band that is very important in the Southern rock movement. Spoiler alert, from Texas. ZZ Top. Yeah.
That's-
Underrated.
Wow, yeah. I would
Yeah.
kind of agree with that too, yeah.
I mean, ZZ Top is one of those bands that, like I said before, they are very important in the Southern rock movement. They're huge.
Top
Don't get me
10
wrong.
best beards.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the best beards in the history of music.
They're huge, but when it comes to like popularity, I mean, sure they're mentioned, but not as much as they should be. I mean, they got some good ass classic rock songs. They're still played the same repetitive songs.
Give Me All Your Lovin', Sharp Dressed
Man and
Legs,
LaGrange.
Yeah, I know.
Viva Las Vegas.
And like I said, they're from Texas, and I'm from Texas, so I have to give them a little bit more of a push.
So is
But
Lyle.
yeah,
So is Lyle.
yeah. But this is the top, my number one underrated.
Good pick.
All right, and now the cream of the crop. My number ones.
More Macho Man next time.
My number one overrated. This one is gonna be the one that I feel I'm gonna be murdered by Kamikaze. My number one overrated. Keep in mind, love this band to death. Just started getting more of their albums recently, but because there's been a couple periods where I've not been so in love with them, and that is Judas Priest.
Say what?
What?
Mm,
That's a
I could cry, man. I
That's a
could cry.
cardinal sin.
Like I said, I love Priest to death,
I
but
do
for me, like after Defenders of the Faith, like I know Kamikaze, you love Turbo. I'm not the biggest Turbo fan, nor am I the
neither.
biggest fan of Ram It Down.
I'm not the biggest fan of Turbo. And as a huge
Yeah.
fan, Turbo's probably none of my best.
Yeah, I would say the same with Rockarola, even though I like a couple of songs off Rockarola. To me, like, they didn't hit their stride until you got to Sad Wings, all the way to Defenders of the Faith. Great run of albums, and then 2 albums where they kind of jumped the shark. Thank God they put out Painkiller, but then you get Ripper Owens, and I like Ripper, but yeah, those Ripper albums, not nearly as good. And now with Halford
Not
back,
nearly
like...
as underrated, but not nearly as good, but Jugulator to me will always be one of the underrated albums of Judas Priest's career. That was arguably Judas Owens era Priest at its best.
Yeah, if I had to choose in that period where you had two of the biggest British bands with different singers, when Maiden had Blaze Bayley and Ripper with Priest, I would go with Ripper and Priest over Blaze and Maiden, even though X Factor is an underrated Maiden album with Blaze. But
I'm surprised.
Borderline.
I'm surprised none of us mentioned Iron Maiden. That's what shocked me when you said Judas Priest.
Well, I mean,
sure they could go hand in hand, but
it could go hand in hand. However, I decided to leave Maiden off because when people say who's the best metal band of all time, and they were to ask me, I would probably say Maiden. So, and I think Sam Dunn from Banger said it best. There are two types of metal fans. There are Maiden fans and there are Priest fans. And I always gravitated towards Maiden, but I love Priest as well. But yeah,
I consider I'm a bit 50-50. Maiden is the very first metal band that I've ever listened in all my life, but I love Judas Priest, especially with these newer albums. I mean, Firepower is still to this day.
I love Firepower too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Firepower
Of 20.
Nostradamus was a great album.
I like Nostradamus, even though a lot of people didn't.
Yeah, Nostradamus is good.
I would say the one of the other problems I think I see people have with Nostradamus, and I've seen this in like comment threads, people have said that they wished Iron Maiden did that album instead of Priest. That's a big what if situation, though.
Nostradamus has good songs. Has Conquest, probably my favorite of that album. War, Nostradamus, and the title.
My favorite
Prophecy.
Yeah, that was one of the best openers. But my favorite off Nostradamus was the song Death, because they basically did the best they could to be like Black Sabbath.
But here's the thing, and this is where I gravitate towards more the Judas Priest side. I would pay to listen to Nostradamus in its entirety, then I would listen what I consider the worst album in Maiden's career, A Matter of Life and Death.
Yeah. Alright, and now my number one underrated. It's been a glaring spoiler since the time to call was made. Broken Hope. Glaring spoiler the entire show, but my number one is Broken Hope. Why? Because, well, I did discover them this year, and I'm thinking, I'm a massive death metal fan, but how could I forget another early pioneer of the genre in the late 80s, early 90s for the brutal death metal style? When people talk brutal death metal, they always talk about early Cannibal Corpse or Suffocation. I would say Broken Hope is the true legends of brutal death metal. When you listen, especially to their first two albums, Swamped in Gore and Bowels of Repugnance, good lord, production so raw despite the fact that it was digitally recorded, which is kind of ironic when you think about it. But some of the most underrated bits of Broken Hope. Jeremy Wagner, the only original member still in the band today on rhythm guitar, great lyric writer, even though it's cheesy. I like cheesy stuff, and he's a solid guitarist. Plus, he bought some of Jeff Hanneman's guitars when they were up for sale from his estate, so he wanted to keep Jeff's legacy going. Totally respect that. He's also a book writer, and he's actually had horror books be on like New York Times bestseller lists. But the other missing component with Broken Hope, their original vocalist, Joe Fychek. People want to talk about who has the most guttural vocal style in death metal. Most people would say either Chris Barnes in the early years, or Frank Mullen, Lord Worm from Cryptopsy. I would argue Joe was way more guttural, because when you hear his voice, he literally sounds like he's vomiting. And they called him the esophagus for good reason. So brutal, so guttural. And yeah, they get a little bit of shit because, they're not technical or they're not very melodic. They're playing the style of brutal death metal where you're not really meant to have either unless you want to incorporate it. And they've had some melodic stuff like acoustic interludes.
Just to say that the banger stuff has already begun.
Yeah, and it ended, funny enough. It was only a 15-minute show, but But nonetheless, with Broken Hope, and after they disbanded in 2002, and unfortunately tragedy struck when Joe committed suicide in 2010, and then in 2015 their original drummer, Ryan Stanek, had a heart attack. But they came back reunited in 2012 with new members, including the vocalist from Gorgasm, Damian Linsky, and good lord, he sounds just as guttural as Joe, and they've put out 2 albums, Omen of Disease and their latest from last year, Mutilated and Assimilated. If you have slept on Broken Hope, definitely check them out. They are a forgotten pioneer in the world of death metal. And rest in peace, Joe and Ryan. Even though Ryan was a bit shady, he did get fired for never giving out merch, but that's another story for another day. But number 1 underrated, Broken Hope.
For the same thing, but our Wilcots lost the band, lost Bolt Thrower at one time or another, and they also lost the Mike, Mike or Mick, their drummer at the time.
And funny enough, you bring up Bolt Thrower again. The only other death metal band I think that could groove just as hard as Bolt Thrower is Broken Hope. When you listen, especially to the breakdown in the last 90 seconds of the song Awakened by Stench off of Swamped in Gore, if you don't... Okay, motorcycle douchebags. If you don't headbang to that breakdown, I don't know if you're human or not, because that is, in my opinion, one of the most underrated slam moments or grooves I've ever heard. And it's not even a traditional breakdown. It's a very mid-tempo riff, but the drums were just so hypnotic. But that pretty much does it for the quite controversial episode of the Horsemen podcast. And thanks to KamikazeGames for joining in, and we may have him back for a future episode someday.
Yep.
Depending.
Good show, guys.
Yeah, and also I'd like to thank Horror Master, a.k.a. Ricky, Artur, and Hannah for joining in as usual. Raphael Fireblade, we know you couldn't make it, but you were with us in spirit, as always. Next episode is our top 10 death metal vocalists. Man, that's going to be tough, because I love death metal, so it's going to be very difficult for me to rank, but thank you guys so much.
That's why I chose that one, because I know it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, because there's so many great ones. But thank you all so much for watching. Peace out, and depending on when this goes up, the next episode of 5 Questions with Levi will be coming after this, or before this, I don't know. Depends on when it gets posted tonight. But thank you for watching, peace out, and keep it metal.
Keep the faith.